Welcome back to another episode of What's Brewing with Humble Joes. Today's special guest is Brian Riley, co-founder, CEO of Guardian Bikes, a company that has become widely known for making the safest kid bikes in the market. All Guardian bikes are sold online at guardianbikes.com, and each bike goes directly from the U.S. factory floor right to the customer's door. Fun fact, Brian and Guardian Bikes appeared on ABC's hit show Shark Tank and is partnered with billionaire investor and IU alum Mark Cuban. Hey, welcome back. We are here with another episode of What's Brewing with Humble Joe's Coffee. I'm Justin. We have barista extraordinaire Corey Murphy over here on my far left, and then our special guest, Brian Riley. Brian, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. Excited to have you guys in the building.
Yeah, we're really excited to learn about your story here and learn about Guardian Bikes and what you're doing. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Usually, we make the AeroPress and we do it on film, but we went ahead and did that ahead of time because I want to talk a little bit about our new blend. It's our Rucksack Blend. And Murphy actually helped develop this coffee and come up with some of the name behind it. But if you want to go ahead and jump right in, we'll take a little taste. We'll talk about it. And then, Murphy, I want to learn a little bit about rucking because you're into the rucking world and what does it mean or what do you do? Tell us a little bit of stories about your rucking experience.
While we're tasting it?
Well, as we taste it.
Okay, as we taste it. Maximize our time here.
Sure. All right. Cheers, guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Now mine should be a little cooler than yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is it's a blend. It's a El Salvador and Peruvian blend. It's roasted light. I think you did a pretty good job making it.
Yeah. I think that, it was a great blend to work with. It's easy, right? It's just hot water and a little coffee. It's not hard.
What about rucking? Why don't you give us a story from what is rucking, or tell us about the rucking world?
Basically, rucking is just walking with weight on your back. You can think of it as like mall walking with a weighted pack, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. 10 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever you're comfortable with, as long as you can maintain a conversational pace. I'll get through it. Conversational pace while you're walking. You're doing well. It comes from the military, like they've rucked forever, and a rucksack is what you throw on your back to carry the weight in. That's why we went with ruck up, right? I was thinking ruck up. I said, grab your ruck, get the day started, and you said, how about rucksack? Like, all right, because not a lot of people are going to know what ruck up means. And it usually just means to grab your ruck and carry on with the day. So that's kind of what we did with it, right? And it's a great form of fitness. It burns more calories than running. It's safer as far as, injuries. So,
how often do you go on your rucks, go on these walks?
3 to 4 times a week, easily, anywhere from 6 to 10 miles. Yeah.
Cool, very good. Brian, what are your thoughts on the coffee after your first taste?
I think it's excellent. It's got a lot of flavor. I think the way you brewed it's interesting. I'm more of an espresso extractor guy, but your whole process here takes a little bit longer, but I think it was worth it. It really kind of puts a lot of flavor into the coffee. It's
trying to balance 2 of them is a little longer. If I'm doing just the one, it's pretty easy to pull off. But doing it on an improv type way, that's my usual setup. But it's usually a lot cleaner. Than a coffee maker. Just pop the puck out and you're done.
Yeah.
Now those AeroPresses, they've come out with a new one, right? It's a little larger. We talked about this. He's going back and forth as to should he buy the bigger one.
I'm trying really hard to avoid buying the other one, just because it's bigger. That's the only reason I want it. I'm an American. I want a bigger one.
Right now we could have used that.
I know. I'll do it. I'll get another one for this.
Good. Send Humble Joe's.
Use it as a Humble Joe's write-off.
The bill we'll take care of.
Yeah, I bet.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get in because we want to learn about you and talk about your story a little. But as far as coffee, though, what does your daily coffee routine look like, or what is your most memorable coffee experience?
Yeah, let's see. I'll start with memorable experience. There's, I think, a number of memorable experiences, and I'd say as an entrepreneur and kind of somebody's, relying on creativity and productivity and everything that goes into building a company. I'd say a lot of this company is fueled by good coffee, and I think over the years that these experiences have come from just sitting in a coffee shop and having a nice coffee at a coffee shop and opening up my laptop and just putting myself in an environment like that and just, kind of away from my normal routine. So I've had a lot of experiences of just, having little breakthroughs and stuff, just kind of sitting at a coffee shop and drinking coffee. Another thing I really like, just experience-wise, is kind of, I think I've had a number of really great experiences and kind of breakthroughs within creativity and ideas when I have coffee and then I actually go do something like a hike. So like, I get a little coffee high going and then I'm actually like out in nature and get myself in a different environment. So there's a number of these times where I remember one time I made myself some coffee, went on a hike in the redwood forest, and just was really thinking about a problem that we were having with our sure stop braking system. Our first version would get a lot of dirt. After you've ridden a bike for a long time, it has a sliding pad mechanism, and this sliding mechanism over time would get a lot of dirt that builds up over it when somebody's taking their bike out and getting it dirty. So I had to figure out, like, how do we create this sliding mechanism that completely blocks out the dirt from happening? And just being by myself and having had my coffee and walking around in the trees and thinking about it, I started to kind of visualize, like, okay, you could build a way to sort of join two parts together where there's a shielding mechanism that's actually part of the part, and it deflects a lot of the dirt off. And so our version of the part today has that, but I remember distinctly that just kind of coming to me after having some coffee and going on a hike. So it's just, using it. I love coffee, the taste of coffee, and it's definitely part of my daily routine, but using it as a tool, to just kind of, get the mind excited and also put myself into these situations where I can create and try to solve problems, because ultimately, building a company is just solving problems every day.
And that's a performance enhancer.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Heck yeah.
Very good. I love it. So professionally, how would you explain your journey from high school until today?
Yeah, it's been a crazy journey. So I grew up in Sacramento, California. I went to high school there, and then I think just growing up and in high school, generally I was kind of a kid that randomly just was kind of interested in all the subjects. So like, people would ask me, like, what's your favorite subject? Are you like a math guy, or do you like this or that? And I'm like, I kind of like them all. I don't like everything about all of them, but I was just kind of a generalist. Like, I just picked up a lot of different things pretty easily across a variety of things. So then I went to college, and I was basically in a business school, and you could pick what you wanted to focus on, and they had this concentration called entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship was basically like kind of focusing on everything in business. So you pick up everything that you need to know, because in entrepreneurship you kind of need to know it all.
Right?
Now, where'd you go to school?
It was called Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. So it was on the central coast of California. It's known to be a really, really good engineering school. Nice. But I was studying business there, and so I had a family, kind of a traumatic family accident where my grandpa was riding a bike and had grabbed his front brake too hard and flipped over the front of his handlebars. And so as I'm studying entrepreneurship and I'm in college, I was hoping, like, hey, maybe I could, solve a problem one day and be an entrepreneur or whatever. I never thought I'd work on something so early on, but I was always thinking about what problem could I solve. And I kept coming back to this head over handlebar accident thing, and I ended up meeting a guy named Andrew who was studying mechanical engineering, and Andrew and I started working together on developing a new type of braking system that could solve this head over handlebar accident from ever happening. So as luck would have it, we kind of, developed something that worked, iterated on some prototypes, and as I was still a college student, we actually had this really neat braking system that would prevent the accident that my grandpa had for other people. So it kind of thrust me into this mode where it not only was a neat idea, but it was one that I was so personally connected to that I really, really wanted to figure out how I could get this thing in the world. And so really, right as I came out of college, we started a company together, had filed some patents, and started going and visiting bike companies and kind of introducing them the technology. We got our very first customer when I was still a senior in college, and the business kind of became a business, and that's all I've done since I've graduated. And that business has evolved from a brake system to now our own bike brand that incorporates that braking system, our own factory in Indiana, and heck of a lot of events along the way. I was able to go on Shark Tank. I got a deal with Mark Cuban. I got like just a bunch of random crazy things that have happened over the last 10 years of doing it. But it all started from just me coming right out of school and getting into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now that the coffee's cooled just a little, let's take another taste and see if you can pick up any of the tasting notes. Murphy, you remember what the roasting the notes are on this one?
No.
Let's see if we can pick those up.
All right. You tell me and I'll take, because otherwise we're like
I think we got a little bit
forcing
of,
people to
yeah.
think that's
I mean,
what's
I
in it,
taste
right?
a little bit of peach and a little bit of brown
All right, that's
sugar.
on the
I don't
bag,
know
you
if
win.
that's on the bag,
Sure.
but I get a little bit of brown sugar.
Put the label in the
Yeah,
bag.
now that you
did.
mentioned that,
I
I
may
did
have
taste that.
typed that label out and printed it myself, so I've read it
With-
several times.
With light roast, you usually taste like a lot of fruit, right? So
And that's one thing, I think this has a nice balance, that it's not a super big fruit bomb. So a little bit of that sweetness, but then it has some of that natural, like brown sugar type
Yeah.
finish to it. Kind of a business question, like people in business, how did you handle early on the no's? Like what would you give me advice or anyone else
Yeah.
working when you hear no, 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 what do you do?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's an obvious kind of resilience that you have to develop in order to kind of make your way through all the no's. I think the biggest thing that's helpful for me, and I always tell entrepreneurs if they ask me, is like get involved in something that you really, really care about, because that's ultimately the thing that is just going to keep you going, right? And in my case, it was like, okay, we have this technology that, you know, could have saved my grandpa from having this accident. It's going to save somebody else from having this accident, hopefully a lot of people from having this accident. And I was so personally kind of invested in it and cared about it that despite all the no's, you know, you just kind of keep going, you keep going, you keep going. I think if you're working on something that you don't necessarily have a passion for, or you don't care about, you know, in some kind of deep way, it's a lot easier to give up. And ultimately, like the whole entrepreneurship journey is really about not giving up. Because, I mean, you know, most people, they have to give up somewhere along the way. But if you actually can have the resilience to stick with it long enough, eventually something starts to work. And that could take years sometimes, right? But like years later, the business actually starts to get its legs and, you know, it starts to spool up. And then all of a sudden you look back 10 years later and you're like, hey, I've got a company here. So yeah, it's just, you know, caring about what you're doing and being personally invested in it, wanting to stick with it, kind of gives you that resilience, in my opinion.
Awesome, that's great. Seymour, why'd you land in Seymour?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a great town.
it's a great
We
town.
are glad that you're here.
It's funny because everybody from Seymour always asks me that, as if like, how did you get here, you know? And in reality, it's you know, we had grown the company up to a certain point, and the standard kind of supply chain model in the bike industry is you're really like 99% of bikes, you're just going as a bike company with a spec to a big OEM bike factory in China, and you're getting the bike built in China. It comes in a box, and then you warehouse it and sell it. So there's virtually no bike manufacturing that exists anymore in the United States. And so we really felt that, you know, the company had grown. We wanted to scale it and get it to more and more people. And the whole company is direct to consumer, so we sell everything just direct to consumer. And we started to see a vision for, you know, being able to actually build a bike factory in the United States and have this vertically integrated model where bikes can come from our factory floor direct to customer's door, and you just have this very efficient supply chain that can scale with the business. And our whole brand's about safety, right? So we have the braking system. The mission of the company has always been about making bikes safer. Well, you can make bikes safer by cool technology like our braking system, you know, design-wise. But one of the best ways is just really controlling the manufacturing and how things are set up, and you know, being obsessive about controlling every aspect of every single bolt on that bike so that that bike is super safe for a kid. And so the only way that we could really do that at scale was control our own manufacturing and have our own manufacturing plant. So when we started looking we decided to do it, and then we decided, okay, we need to look in where in the country would be the best place to put this. And so first of all, Indiana ends up being a really great logistics location for direct to consumer because it's in a place where you can reach a very large amount of the population within a couple days.
Crossroads of America. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So number one was logistics, the ideal logistics location. So then we started looking at, okay, let's look at, what are the people like there? What are the skill sets? What's the labor pool like? And there's so much manufacturing in Indiana that, we really felt positive about, okay, we're going to hire a lot of people. They need to be used to working with their hands, manufacturing, and have some understanding there. So check that box. And then when we actually started coming to visit, went to Bartholomew County, went to Jackson County, went all over Indiana, and came to Seymour, met with Jim Plump, and walked around Seymour, met a lot of people, and just had a really good feeling about this place and the people and just kind of the values here. And so we ended up deciding to come here. Sam Markle, who's our VP of Manufacturing Operations, he actually grew up in Brownstown, so he's quite familiar with the area. So that was a plus. And then ever since we've set up here, it's just been a great experience. I mean, we've hired a lot of people, and people are just really hardworking and really care about what they're building, which is great.
That's great. So how long have you been here in Seymour?
About a year.
About a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I moved here in July of last year.
Awesome.
I guess a little more than a year now, since it's August.
Kind of a sidebar. I'm looking around and I can't wait to check it out after we're done with this, but I see little bikes over in the corner there. My daughter's getting ready to turn 3.
Uh-huh.
What do you have here for her?
Yeah, we've got everything from a bike for a 1.5-year-old to a bike for a 14-year-old. So if your daughter's 3, depending on how tall she is, she'd either be ready for a 14-inch bike or maybe even getting close to ready for a 16-inch bike. At that age, it kind of depends on height.
So those really focus on balance, right?
Yeah.
Help them balance the bikes.
Yeah, so we actually have a specific balance bike that doesn't have any pedals and doesn't have a crank or anything like that, and you just learn on that bike by kicking around and mastering balance. And then you can graduate to one of our pedal bikes. You put the pedals on, and if you've mastered the balance part of it, that's the best way to learn how to ride a bike these days is kind of, if you can, stay away from the training wheels and just really master that balance, and then you can get right onto a real bike. And typically kids pick up how to ride in one day, especially if they've mastered the balance part.
Very cool.
I don't know how you are in your bike history, but is that like a fairly new concept, the balance bikes? Because I've only seen them since my daughter was probably 3 or 4.
Yeah, they're fairly new. I mean, they've gotten more and more popular just really in the past, say, 5-6 years.
Right.
But if you think about it, training wheels, they almost teach you the wrong balancing method. So like when you're turning around, you see kids kind of like leaning on their training wheels and stuff, and so they don't really master how the bike
You get that
actually
teeter effect.
Yeah, they don't master how the bike actually feels and how to counter that balance. So on a balance bike, or even one of our normal bikes, we teach the balance bike method. So if let's say your daughter was 5 and you're going to get one of our bigger bikes, you can actually take the pedals off, lower the seat all the way, and kind of use a normal bike as a balance bike and just kick around and master that balance. Okay. And once you've got the balance mastered, now you're putting the pedals back on, and all you really have to learn at that point is just how to turn those pedals, right? And keep going. So it really teaches those habits of how to kind of counterbalance. And as a kid, your brain starts to kind of click, and you're like, okay, this is kind of how it feels. And so it's just a much faster way to learn.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Like I said, I'd just seen it in the last maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about professionally? What would you say your proudest moment is? You had to pick one.
I think, we got invited to go on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And it's this moment of you go on the show and that 8 million people are going to see it. Every single person you've ever known in your whole life is probably going to watch it.
You weren't
see
nervous,
it.
were you?
No.
Leading up to it, you were
A place
fine.
like Shark Tank, you should just be happy to go in there.
Yeah. So I think that as a really key moment, both in the business and just in my professional life, getting invited to go on the show, making it all the way through to actually appear on the show, and then being able to go in there and come out with a deal with Mark Cuban, who's who we wanted to make a deal with going in, and all the preparation that went into that, and that's probably one of the most memorable moments, and it always be just part of the company's story, and Mark Cuban today still is just a great mentor and investor in the company and partner, and it's just so cool to be able to work with a guy like that. And so it's hard to beat that one.
Yeah, what's he like personally? I mean, is he laid back and easygoing?
He's
fun to talk
he's
with?
a totally normal guy. You would, like, if you didn't recognize him or know who he was or something, you'd have no idea that he was a billionaire, super successful. But he is as normal as us three. I mean, he could be sitting here having coffee with us.
Does he drink coffee?
I'm not really that normal.
Yeah, I think he
May
does.
have to
I think
send
he
him some
does.
coffee.
Yeah,
Maybe you can hook me up.
yeah.
Very neat. That's awesome. What was the application or the tryout process? Was it pretty extensive, several rounds of that, or how did that work?
Yeah, so there's a written application, there's a video application, and they have all these kind of sequences where they're just kind of cutting down the list. So I think it's something like 80,000 people, apply to go on every season, and they cut it down to, I think, like 80 companies or 90 companies or something. So it's like harder to get on than, going to Harvard or something.
Is there a lot of do you sit in a waiting room with any of these other people and talk about what's your thing? You guys are kind of spitballing between all of you?
I mean, most of the early stages, there's not a whole lot of interaction with the other companies, and then they start having these weekly calls with you where they're essentially kind of asking you to come back and prepare a pitch on the next call, and then you kind of prepare a pitch. So they're kind of preparing you. They're preparing. They're starting to prepare you a little bit, but they also tell you hey, by the next call, we can tell you you're no longer in it. So every time you're having one of these calls, you're like, okay, are we going to still be in it?
This might be the end.
Yeah, this might be then.
Okay.
So they cull down the list week after week after week, and they do this for months, leading up to the time that you actually film. And so it's a little bit nerve-wracking because you never, I mean, the chances are that you won't get on, even if you're in the process. Statistically, you won't make it to the end. So just having actually made it to the end and then having got a deal and stuff, I mean, I look back at the whole thing and I'm like, I got to pinch myself, that really happened? That's just crazy. So yeah, it's pretty nuts.
We'll wrap it up here because we don't want to take too much of your time, but currently, where are you guys at? What's your current project? And then if you can share, what's the future look like for Guardian Bikes?
Yeah, I mean, project-wise, the biggest thing, I've been completely all in, heads down focused on, building this company. And every single year, every couple years, there's a big theme into what the company's really, really focused on. And now it's just, building what I call kind of the product that builds the product, right? So it's everything with this factory and how it's designed, and we're still very early in it, and we've got, we're standing underneath one of our lines. And so just thinking about, placement and how we make certain things, how we make things flow really easily, and how we build the software to run everything, and basically essentially building the product that builds the product so that as the company grows, we can just replicate, we have this line, let's replicate it, let's replicate it, let's replicate it. And so it's sort of the design of the thing that makes the bike.
Okay.
So that's the big focus, is just really optimizing the manufacturing process and allowing the company to just make more and more bikes. And
trying to streamline your processes as best you can.
Do you already feel like you're outgrowing the building a little bit?
Oh yeah.
I wondered. I was like,
this is actually
it looks
one of
uncluttered. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just man, you can already tell there's
Yeah, it's we're busting at the seams. I mean,
Yeah.
so that we started in this building. We thought that this building would last us at least a couple years. We're a year into it, and we already have 3 buildings now in town. So this is we started with this one, thought it would be the only one we need. We ended up leasing another 60,000 square feet that's down the road, and then the building across the street, we just leased 50,000 square feet in that one.
Wow.
And so in this building, you won't see a whole lot of complete bike inventory, because all the actual fulfillment and shipping, all the complete bikes that get assembled here, they get taken to the warehouse down the road and they get shipped out of there. So we're going to need a much bigger building and then consolidate everything at some point.
That's good to hear. You're doing well then, yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Anything else you'd like to share about Guardian Bikes or your journey or your story?
No, I mean, if any of the audience wants to check us out, it's guardianbikes.com. We've become known for making the safest kids bikes in the industry, and customers love us, and so I'd encourage anybody that has kids or even has a niece or nephew or whatever to check us out. And if you live in Seymour and you ever want to come by for a tour, we love kind of showing people around the facility and showing people what we do. So
Very good.
I didn't have to do this to get a tour.
Yes.
I didn't know
It's
that.
in
I
your
didn't know
contract.
that.
You
See,
have to
okay.
do whatever I
But
ask you to
I
do.
will say something on that. You talked
Yeah.
about like emphasis on safety. I did through research. I found a lot of YouTube videos, testimonials, parents, basically doing vlogs and stuff saying, "Hey, thanks Guardian Bikes for this."
Awesome.
Like it was kind of cool. Like I was like, man, that's like heartwarming. So I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of cool.
awesome.
Great. Well, I think it's awesome. We love what you're doing. I love your story, your why you're doing this. Appreciate you letting us come into your place of work, and this is your home. I mean, this is where
Yeah.
it's all at. So
Spent a lot of time here.
thank you for letting us come in and chat, and I appreciate it. And cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you guys so much for coming by.
Yep.